Welcome fam. Before we dive into the story, please kindly subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share your thoughts below. At 16, I was unstoppable. Valedictorian, early admission to college, pre-med track mapped out perfectly. My mother had our family's rise to respectability planned to the year. Georgia will be our first doctor. She'd show my report cards to neighbors, beam at parent-teacher conferences, already picking out my future practice's location. I was the golden child, the one destined to lift our working-class family into something more dignified. My acceptance letters were framed on the wall, my future salary calculated and recalculated. Then Marcus smiled at me across that summer job counter, and everything shifted. 3 months later, staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test at 17, I knew my carefully constructed future was about to crumble. The family meeting that followed felt like a funeral for dreams I'd never get to chase, with my mother's devastated face haunting me for years to come. "You've thrown your life away," my mother said, her voice hollow with grief. "You could have been somebody important, Georgia. A doctor, respected. Instead, you chose this." Her disappointment hung in our house like smoke, suffocating every conversation. Family gatherings became exercises in shame. Whispered conversations stopping when I entered rooms. Cousins updating everyone on their college applications while I sat silent, belly growing. Even my father, usually my champion, could barely look at me. Such potential wasted. I'd hear him tell my uncle. The golden child had become the cautionary tale overnight, living proof of how quickly everything could go wrong. My mother's dreams for our family's elevation died with my teenage pregnancy announcement. Relatives would shake their heads sympathetically when discussing my situation, their pity cutting deeper than outright anger. I became the family example of what not to do, the daughter who had everything going for her, but threw it all away for teenage romance. While my high school classmates headed to college, I was learning to change diapers with textbooks propped open beside me. But I refused to let my mother's disappointment define my future. When my youngest turned 2, I enrolled in community college night classes, studying after the kids fell asleep, writing essays between diaper changes and doctor appointments. It took 6 years, juggling 3 children and part-time jobs, but I earned my associate degree in business administration, then another in early childhood education. My mother attended my graduation ceremony with pursed lips. 2 associate degrees, she said flatly. You could have had your medical degree by now. Even my academic success couldn't erase her vision of what I'd thrown away at 17. But I kept building brick by brick in the shadows of her disappointment. Every late-night studying session was an act of defiance against the narrative that my life was over. I was proving that detours don't have to mean dead ends, that dreams can be reshaped even when they can't be reclaimed. No achievement could shake my mother's narrative of my ruined life. When I got promoted to office manager, she reminded neighbors I could have been saving lives as a doctor. When I bought my first house at 28, she mentioned how doctors lived in much nicer neighborhoods. My children's accomplishments were somehow both despite and because of me. They succeeded because they saw what happened when you made bad choices, she'd explained to relatives. Even when I started taking college courses again at 35, working toward my bachelor's degree, her response was lukewarm. "Better late than never, I suppose, but imagine where you'd be if you hadn't gotten sidetracked." The teenage pregnancy label followed me everywhere, defining every conversation about my life for 2 decades. At family dinners, my successes were footnotes to my failures. When I received Employee of the Year, my mother's congratulations came with caveats. Every milestone was measured against the medical career I'd never had, every achievement diminished by comparison to what might have been. What my mother couldn't see was the family I was building with intentional love and unwavering dedication. While she mourned my lost medical career, I was raising 3 children who felt unconditionally loved, who learned resilience by watching their mother work multiple jobs while attending night classes. I taught them that circumstances don't define you. Choices do, and that every setback is an opportunity to demonstrate character. Every homework session at our kitchen table was a lesson in perseverance. Every budget meeting where we planned for their college funds was a masterclass in sacrifice and prioritization. My daughter Sarah watched me study for finals while pregnant with my 3rd child and learned that learning never stops. My sons Michael and David saw me advocate for them at school meetings and learned to speak up for themselves and others. They didn't see a ruined life, they saw strength in action every single day. Our modest home became a place where education mattered more than expensive things, where character counted more than credentials, and where love was never conditional on performance or achievement. By the time my children graduated high school, something beautiful had happened that my mother couldn't see through her lens of disappointment. Sarah became a registered nurse, following her calling to heal others with the same compassion I'd shown her through scraped knees and broken hearts. Michael chose teaching, passionate about reaching kids who struggled academically like he once had, understanding that everyone deserves patient encouragement. David went into social work, dedicating his life to helping families in crisis, having learned from watching me navigate our own challenges with grace. All 3 graduated college completely debt-free because I'd worked tirelessly, taking extra shifts and saving every possible dollar for their education. They built strong marriages based on the model of commitment they'd witnessed, raised confident children who knew they were valued, and became pillars in their communities. The failed teenage mother had produced 3 successful, compassionate adults who were making the world better through their careers and character. But my mother still spoke of my wasted potential at family dinners, unable to see the success story unfolding right in front of her, blind to the legacy I was actually building. Then came Emma, Sarah's daughter, brilliant and driven like I'd once been, but with something extra, unshakable confidence built on a foundation of unconditional love. At 18, she was everything my mother had wanted me to become: valedictorian, full scholarship to college, acceptance to medical school with stellar test scores and glowing recommendations. Emma had the grades, the ambition, the bright future mapped out perfectly. But unlike me at her age, Emma also carried the wisdom of watching 3 generations of women navigate dreams, disappointments, and determination. She'd grown up hearing stories about my mistakes from great-grandmother, but she'd also witnessed my quiet strength firsthand. Emma watched me put myself through school while working full-time, saw me advocate for her cousins at school meetings, witnessed me turn our modest home into a place where education and kindness mattered more than money or status. As Emma prepared for her valedictorian speech, she asked me about my teenage years, listening with the insight of someone who understood that success has many definitions and that the most important legacies aren't always the most obvious ones. Graduation day arrived with the whole family gathered to celebrate Emma's achievement. My mother sitting in the front row beaming with the pride she'd once reserved exclusively for my report cards 25 years earlier. As Emma took the podium in her cap and gown, I expected the usual valedictorian speech about bright futures and following dreams, perhaps a thank you to teachers and parents. Instead, she looked directly at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I want to thank the woman who taught our entire family what real strength looks like." The room went completely silent, hundreds of people hanging on her words. My grandmother was told she ruined her life by choosing family over career at 17. But she didn't ruin anything, she built everything that matters. Emma's voice grew stronger as she continued, describing how my supposed sacrifice had created a foundation for 3 generations of achievement, how my 2 associate degrees had somehow produced a nurse, 2 teachers, and now her heading to medical school. She spoke about resilience, about redefining success, about the difference between achieving for yourself and building something lasting for others. Her words cut through 25 years of family disappointment like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. My mother's face crumpled as Emma continued speaking, 25 years of rigid disappointment melting into something softer and more complex. Tears streamed down her cheeks for the first time since my pregnancy announcement decades earlier, and I watched her finally understand what the third generation could see so clearly. I hadn't failed at becoming a doctor. I'd succeeded at something far more important and lasting. Emma finished her speech by looking directly at me and saying, "Grandma Georgia, you're not the cautionary tale they said you were. You're my hero, and the reason I have the courage to pursue medicine, while never forgetting that the most important work happens in our hearts and homes." The standing ovation that followed wasn't just for Emma's academic achievement. It was recognition of a story that had been misunderstood and undervalued for too long. My mother sat frozen in her chair, finally seeing her daughter not as a disappointment, but as the architect of everything she'd actually wanted, a family of educated, successful, compassionate people who lifted each other up. The medical degree she'd mourned had multiplied into something far greater than she'd ever imagined possible. That night, my mother pulled me aside with shaking hands and whispered through her tears, "I was so wrong about you, Georgia. So completely, devastatingly wrong." For the first time in 25 years, she saw my teenage pregnancy not as the end of my story, but as the beginning of something beautiful and lasting that couldn't be measured in traditional terms. The bad choice that supposedly ruined everything had actually created everything that mattered. 3 successful children, 5 grandchildren heading to college, and a family culture built on unconditional love, resilience, and service to others. Emma did go to medical school, fulfilling the dream my mother thought I'd abandoned forever. But she carried with her the values I'd instilled through my sacrifice. That success means lifting others up, that strength is found in service, and that the most important legacy isn't what you achieve for yourself, but what you make possible for those who come after you. My mother finally understood that I hadn't thrown my life away at 17. I'd planted seeds that would bloom across generations, creating a harvest far richer than any single career could have provided. If you've watched this far, drop your thoughts in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Share this video with someone who might be interested. Thank you for watching.